I swear that until my dream of a world where dignity, honor, and justice are the reality we share, I will never stop fighting, never. What happened to Manchester Black after the Superman vs. the Elite story? He returned to seek revenge involving Lois Lane in his plan, but Superman's reaction would cost this villain his life. Before we discuss this plot point, you might want to know some important details if you only watched the movie. The story originates from Action Comics number 775 published in 2001. What's so funny about truth, justice, and the American way? The story is brief, only 39 pages, and far simpler than the adaptation. That being said, the plot and Superman's epic dialogue remain the same in both versions, which is what matters most. To avoid making a too long comparison of differences, I'll just tell you that in the comic, Manchester Black didn't lose his powers permanently, as was hinted in the movie. But those abilities were turned off long enough to lock him up in a safe place and not cause problems along the way. Now, once he was processed by the government, he also belonged to the famous Suicide Squad, and we wouldn't hear much from him again until Superman. Final battle. Clark Kent's friends suddenly came under attack. His parents, co-workers, and as time passed, even his ex-school teacher and former football coach joined in. The librarian. In short, anyone who in his life had had any approach to the now reporter. A great gallery of villains appeared during this adventure, from the silliest to the hardest to fight. But they all intended to murder someone. And little by little, attack after attack, Superman began to lose patience. That being said, he always ensured civilians remained unharmed. It wasn't long before Superman realized that one of his enemies had discovered his secret. Luckily, he had a contingency plan for these situations, and with Lois's help, they called and gathered all of Clark's acquaintances to keep them safe in a facility guarded by John Henry. These people had to be convinced by Superman to stay here until the danger passed, and everyone obeyed. Everyone except Lois, who soon had to leave the site to fulfill her duty as a reporter and investigate. Who was the mastermind behind the attacks on the Kryptonian? Superman continued fighting for the rest of the day, won every battle, and in a breather took the opportunity to go look for the president. Lex Luthor, a likely suspect, but no, he wasn't responsible. Someone had revealed the superhero's identity and, to Clark Luthor's own surprise, did nothing with that information. Soon after, the former members of what was once the Elite also showed up here to kill Lex Luthor. Caught off guard by the presence of Superman, whom they did not expect to run into, Menagerie stopped fighting and asked Superman for help, saying that they were not the ones doing this. However, he suddenly fell to the ground. Before mentioning anything else, the author had everything under control and attacked directly in his brain to prevent them from ruining his plans. It was clear that the enemy to defeat was Manchester Black, but his location was unknown. Goldcast also didn't know where that damn guy was and just asked Superman not to hold back when he managed to find him. The guy had to die because of how dangerous he was. More enemies kept appearing and unfortunately Lois Lane was found by Manchester Black. Everything was going as planned, while Superman remained immersed in battles that seemed to have no end. Lois was mentally tortured by a man who forced her to recall the years of abuse she suffered from her father. She was immersed in a nightmare. When the hero arrived to rescue her, it was too late to save his wife. He found her on the ground, murdered by that man she had humiliated a long time ago. Manchester Black mocked Superman while trying to make him see that the system he fought for was worthless. His ideals were outdated and didn't work. Was it of any use to lock this enemy in prison? Anyway, the government itself secretly used him for its own purposes, even did some favors for Luthor. Superman simply asked why he had to do this, and the answer was simple: because he hated him. Manchester believed the world was cruel and dark, insisting Superman was unaware of this reality. Did he cause this tragedy in order to make him human? Suddenly, a fight between them began. Superman was so enraged that he couldn't tolerate even a joke from his enemy about his tragedy. Manchester fell very soon, and while he was on the ground, he repeated that Kryptonian speech about dreams. He recited it from beginning to end, also mentioning that Superman simply could not exist in the real world. It was not possible. Immediately, Manchester's body was eradicated by the Kryptonians' heat vision. I have never been more full of rage. I feel life shudder to nothing in front of me and I smile. And Lloyd is still dead and my heart is still full of hate. All I've managed to do is kill myself. There's a part of me that wants to kill you right here, right now, for what you've done. And I can do it, I know I can, but that would ultimately undo everything I've been fighting for all my life. And what's worse, it would dishonor the principles that Lois and I held in our hearts, the principles she died for. I don't want to dishonor my wife for you. We return to reality, where Manchester Black remains incredulous at what Superman has just said. He explains once again that he has just killed the woman he loves and doesn't understand why Superman hasn't even given him a single punch. As he holds Lois's corpse in his arms, Clark also clarifies some things. Firstly, that under no circumstances was he going to kill Manchester. This plan to provoke and break him had failed. Revenge is not justice. He would simply take care of putting Lois in a safe place and would return to look for this guy to be imprisoned as he should be. He would spend the rest of his life making sure he never escaped again. Black was simply left speechless, and after a few seconds asked again if he really wasn't going to kill him. Superman simply responded with a single word, never. Having explored his mind and making sure that Clark wasn't lying, Manchester undid the illusion he had caused. Lois Lane was fine, she was alive. They both hugged while Black watched them. Under his breath, he kept repeating his plan. He wanted to be killed just so that Superman would realize that Lois had been alive all along. It would be a mistake that would haunt him forever. However, Black never believed that this hero would be impossible to break. Manchester left the place disgusted. He also erased the memories of those he told Superman's secret to. He sat on the bed of his small apartment while he meditated. As a child, he dreamed of childish things. Then I saw those children being burned, beaten, harassed, and killed, and I thought everything was like that. And then I found you, and I hated that you made me feel like a child who dreams again. But that's what it's about, isn't it? Were you real? And I became a miserable supervillain. Manchester Black committed suicide believing he no longer had a purpose in life. This story is part of the main canon before Flashpoint, in the era of the New 52. Manchester would appear again, now with a different role, and later return in the revered era, with a role and image closer to the traditional, although with black hair instead of purple. More recently, we would see him again on the same theme as Superman in Grant Morrison's story Superman and the Authority. This title will likely have a significant impact on the future of the DC universe and this Kryptonian. In summary, we've seen the aftermath of Batman's expulsion from the Justice League and the consequences of the first confrontation between Manchester and Superman. So tell me, would you like to see more videos with this theme? Please let me know in the comments. Thanks for stopping by, friends, and remember that if you liked the video, you help me a lot with a subscription. For my part, I have nothing more to say. My name is Alex for the Negayo channel. See you later. Thank you.